Okay. Okay, y'all. What's going on? What's going on? Here I am with another one of my videos. So, this is, Black Lives Matter. So, either way, supposedly, I'm going to be doing the documentary of the late legend pop star Prince. So, therefore, this is part one. So, I'm going to be doing like half of it, and if probably I'll do some more tomorrow. So this is a long documentary, so I'm gonna get around to it and I'm gonna hear the audio. So let's get around to it.
Prince, outrageous, iconoclastic, oozing charisma, a 5'3" rock god, and a man who very few people truly knew or understood.
I felt that he was super cautious, like he had trust issues. I felt that's what I was called a lot of the time, because I just think he wanted to have people around him that he felt safe with.
At the heart of Prince is someone who was by music and needed everyone around him to understand that.
The song that became Prince's theme tune and the iconic film of the same name was an anthem and a story of redemption. It established Prince, the superstar, and resonated around the world with 22 million sales.
Back in the game. Prince is the equivalent of a musical Einstein, if you may, combined with a little bit of Mozart.
3, 4. Prince's genius was never in question, yet the seeds of his self-destruction were sown long before he became a star.
I don't think he ever felt true love. I don't think he ever felt true acceptance.
Prince shot to global fame, propelled by the need to free himself from his past. He never escaped the guilt and shame of his early years.
It was beyond an obsession. It was a compulsion.
Prince expressed his deepest feelings in his music.
Please, Lord, spare me.
And he wove his childhood trauma into iconic songs and timeless hits like When Doves Cry.
I just want to come back in the house. I'm cold, Dad.
Life is very tough when you're a 12-year-old, short, teased African-American with no money who can't come home.
His damaged past compelled Prince to look for home and family in all the wrong places.
Wow, damn! I never knew that Prince was dealing with a lot in his early childhood. And I think this is going to be quite interesting. But hey, I never knew when I heard the song "Purple Rain." Even though there was a movie called Purple Rain, but still, I never knew. I never knew that Prince was dealing with a lot. 12 years old, trying to find home, no money, African and black. Yeah. Furthermore, let me continue on.
His childhood, tainted by sex, set him on a collision course, personally and professionally.
Do you really believe that the young people of America should be listening to this kind of thing?
Not at all, ma'am.
To protect himself from the world, Prince built his own private palace and named it Paisley Park.
We used to say he was the lonely guy. We used to call him the lonely guy because we didn't want him to be lonely.
Throughout his life, Prince cut himself off from those who loved him and could help him.
He was like a son to me. I was like a dad to him.
Prince abstained from recreational drugs, yet died on the 21st of April 2016, aged 57, following a lethal overdose of painkillers.
Whoa! Yeah, because I heard about his suicide. Man, he was dealing with a lot. He was going through a lot. He was only 56 years old, right? It's crazy how he went through all of that, and he still was going through that. But crazy, man. Overdose on painkillers.
So the person is dead here.
I just could not believe it. I said, no, can't be true. But it was true.
Prince, above all, wanted to fly with the angels, and yet his demons would finally catch up with him.
What if everybody around me split? I'd be left with only me. I'd have to fend for me.
The Prince story icon, genius slave.
Prince, one of the world's most successful musicians, died alone behind the wire in the fortress he created. There was no one to help him.
As I got to know Prince, it became pretty clear that he had some pretty serious issues.
Prince spent his whole life unhappy. I think he spent his whole life alone.
I think he was afraid of life, in the sense that it hadn't always been kind to him.
You look towards the end of his life, you can see he was trying to repair his childhood. Even that shot of him riding his bicycle around his complex, Paisley Park, he just looked like he was a kid again. He even went back to how his hair used to be in the 70s, this big afro. If you look at him, he went full circle, came back to being that little boy again.
Prince's story starts and ends in Minneapolis, capital of Minnesota in the Midwest. Born in 1958, Prince was different from the start. He was given a rock star's name, Prince Rogers Nelson.
Most of my friends in New York would say, why are you in Minneapolis? There are no black people there.
The odds were stacked against him at a very early age, simply into the community he was born into, a certain amount of poverty, being black in Minnesota, especially in the 60s.
Prince's father, John Lewis Nelson, and his mother, Mattie Shaw Nelson, were an outwardly respectable, God-fearing couple.
The eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open unto their cry.
The family were Seventh-day Adventists, a strict Christian sect that discourages smoking and drinking and believes failing to walk next to God defiles the human spirit.
For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them.
Prince's parents prayed for their son because they feared he was different from everyone else. Prince would open up about this for the first time 4 decades later.
I've never spoken about this before, but I was born epileptic. And I used to have seizures when I was young. And my mother and father didn't know what to do or how to handle it.
Some religious communities saw epilepsy as a gift from God. Mostly it was seen as insanity, or worse still, possession by the devil, with no greater sin than a seizure in church.
Don't let me down, honey. You know what they'll do to you in church if it happens again.
But sometimes I can't help myself, Mom.
Just put your trust in God. You don't need me to protect your child. You're a big boy now. You're my big, brave boy. You're my big, brave, talented boy. Huh? Uh-huh.
Prince's condition threatened to bring the family to breaking point. John Lewis Nelson's job in a factory could barely support his wife and children, let alone pay medical bills.
Someone in the crowd replied, "Teacher, I brought you my son, who has a spirit that makes him mute. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they were unable. How long must I remain here with you? How long must I put up with you?
He was so deeply ashamed. What people don't understand, I don't think, is his sense of shame.
The stigma of epilepsy would haunt Prince, echoing through his life for years to come. When performing his 1994 track, The Sacrifice of Victor, Prince can be seen miming a strange seizure or fit. The lyrics describe how he became epileptic through a difficult birth, and then emerged a victor over his affliction.
My mother told me one day I walked into her and said, Mom, I'm not going to be sick anymore. And she said, why? And I said, because an angel told me so. Now, I don't remember saying it. That's just what she told me.
He was a little bit like Michael Jackson.
As a boy, Prince was taken to see his father play in the downtown club on Hampton Avenue, Minneapolis, something Prince would never forget. A production line worker and religious zealot by day, John Lewis Nelson was a jazz pianist by night.
Y'all sure looking real cozy up there tonight. All right, let's enjoy ourselves.
He gave himself the stage name Prince, the same name he called his son. On stage, John Lewis Nelson was not the father Prince knew. No Bible, no lectures, just all the forbidden fruits: wine, women, song. The ladies loved him, yet John Lewis Nelson would never make it as a professional musician. Financial pressure meant he could not quit his day job. He smoked and drank at home, despite telling others not to do so. A bitter man, he would become deeply jealous of his son.
A really brilliant musician in John Nelson, but also very...
Damn, was his father like that? Was his father like that? Jealous because of his son's success? If his father was better, no wonder Prince felt lost.
Very narcissistic, selfish man who was a far better musician than he was a father.
Please, Daddy. Will you teach me to play?
Sit right down, son. This is a fine instrument, Prince. It's not a toy. Think you're better than me, do you? Get out of here. I gotta practice. I got a gig tonight.
Wow. Dang. No wonder Prince felt lost as a child. It's crazy. His father was that damn selfish and jealous that his son became the better musician than his father was. To me, Prince's father is a straight douche. Like, you that damn jealous because your son played better than you. Man, no wonder he was fighting demons. This man had a lot of demons in him.
How can I put this? My father was so hard on me. I was never good enough. And there was something about that. It was almost like the army when it came to music.
John Lewis Nelson gave his son a musician's name and then refused to help him play. Ruled by a religious man who did not practice what he preached, Prince grew up in a world tainted by hypocrisy.
In my household, with my grandparents, we very much knew that that was wrong and you weren't allowed to do this, but you were allowed to do that. It was either you were a Christian or you weren't. There was none of this mixing it. But I think with Prince, it was
his father was a religious man. But his father, did he even, at least, I know he was hard on his son, but his father didn't at least help him. He didn't teach them. He didn't even though he was gave the name Prince, but his father didn't even help him.
a little bit more complicated.
The contradictions of his childhood marked Prince. From the beginning, he wrestled with angels and demons, setting a pattern he would repeat throughout his life, trying and failing to keep his demons at bay. The problems of his early childhood, the epilepsy, the powerful father and weak mother, left Prince feeling vulnerable, unsure of what was right and what was...
Wow, so his mother was weak, but his father was the control freak. That's crazy, man. That is crazy. Now that right there makes me a little bit angry. It's just that's why when I say kids' generation are getting raised back, it's because the parents aren't being responsible for their actions or their responsibilities of being careful parents to their children. But I'm not gonna pause anymore. I'm just gonna listen now until I get to at least a half of it, and I'll stop right there and I'll continue on some other time.
What was wrong?
So there were times he had to look in the mirror and just really, really wonder what is his purpose on this planet.
At school, things were no better. Prince was the short black kid with the name everyone laughed at.
He had told me when he was very young, remember I met him when he was 16, what he wanted most in life was to become famous. Music wasn't his first love. His first love was really basketball.
Prince shot hoops hour. Yet the one thing he really needed for basketball was beyond his reach.
He was on teams, and I think he really came into himself. But as he got older, he stopped growing. When he finally realized that basketball wasn't going to be a dream he was going to be able to realize because of how tall he was, I think he turned to music and poured all of his heart and soul into that.
Being short would not stop Prince from becoming a musician.
1, 2, 3, 4. Get up, get on up.
James Bond,
Get up.
1970.
Sex Machine, I was sure that
I
was
remember hearing this.
Probably influenced
I wasn't even born when this happened, but I heard
because the very unique style of playing bass, which was a turning point for young black musicians. Prince more than once mentioned to me riding his bike after school to the record store to get the new James Brown 45 that he just had to have.
Prince played obsessively every night in a friend's basement, teaching himself as many instruments as he could, throwing himself into music with guts and soul.
He did not want to fail at anything. He had that desire that he is going to win. He's going to do every single thing that he can. And if he don't make it, it's not going to be his fault.
Prince chose a hard path. Everyone said a black artist could never succeed in Minneapolis. That's why his own father struggled to break through.
Minneapolis, when I started my recording studio, was a kind of a cow town. I mean, it was a very white country rock environment.
Back in Brooklyn, we had black radio stations, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 radio stations. Here they had one.
Prince set out to prove everyone else wrong, as he would repeatedly do throughout his life. After 3 years of mastering guitar, keyboards, and drums, the groundwork paid off, as Prince later recalled on the Tavis Smiley Show.
I taught myself how to play music, and I just stuck with it, and I did it all the time. And sooner or later, people in the neighborhood heard about me, and then they started to talk about me.
The word had spread throughout the black community that there was a place you could go, and there was this Englishman over there that loved recording R&B and black music.
So when he was 15 and I came here, he was playing with Grand Central. That was his band.
Hi, Mr. Moon, right?
I was contacted by the mother of the band, who was the manager.
Nice to meet you.
And she contacted me and she said she wanted to do a demo tape.
I don't need your charity, Mr. Moon. I got my money. I can pay.
And so this lady that had brought this group into the studio that was producing them, you know, really had the support, I think, of the community, and everyone kind of helped them.
This boy here on the block, he plays everything, and I mean everything.
So I started listening to him, and I realized he had talent.
After that child, Mr. Moon, he don't say much, but he got a volcano of emotions under the surface.
And I realized he could play all the instruments. And I thought, this is the answer to my prayers. So after months and months and months of working with Prince, very, very close basis, producing this music, I had him named. We had his first big song packaged up, Soft and Wet. We had his identity created, and we had his demo tape built. And so now it was time to go to the next step.
The first time I heard Soft and Wet, that song, I was immediately like blown away because I just felt it sounded so different to everything else.
By 1978, Prince had his first recording contract and his first manager.
What struck me was the depth of the music that was being made. It did not sound like one person playing all the instruments. I hear this falsetto come in of this. It was there was a vulnerability to the voice that immediately caught my attention.
Prince always set the rules. He said everything must be done as he wanted. Warner Brothers, Prince's record label, found this out the hard way.
We're so excited, Prince. This sounds great. The label sent me down from A&R just to listen in for a bit. Just wondering about the bass line on this track. What do you think? A little bit more, a little bit less?
Get out of my studio.
What did he say?
He says that to everyone.
It was clear that there were other issues that went into his personality and his impatience, his demanding perfectionism that went beyond a normal perfectionist.
He just wanted to prove that, hey, I'm somebody. I got something to say. And I want you people to experience what I have to say.
It wasn't like we said, hey, kid, we think we can make you a star. Let's put you on our journey. No, he was on a journey. And I always felt that, if we could just support him through that, because he knows what he wants.
Once Prince, the unknown boy from Minneapolis, signed his first $1 million record deal. He was on his way to becoming one of the world's greatest rock stars. Success would bring Prince the power and identity he craved, while the exposure of fame would always be painful for him. This first became clear in 1979. Soon after being signed by Warner Brothers, Prince's single, I Want to Be Your Lover, shot to number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. To promote it, Prince went on Dick Clark's American Bandstand. All went well, until Dick Clark came to interview him.
You made a couple of demonstration records when you were a teenager. You're barely more than that now, are you?
19.
19. How many years ago did you make these demos and then have offers on them?
Prince clammed up and could hardly speak.
He comes back from Los Angeles. He comes over my house. And I go, what's wrong with you? What happened, man? You're on a national TV show. Dick Clark is asking you these questions. And what happened? Because I know he's not like that.
And why would you turn it down?
They wouldn't let me produce myself.
You were 15 at the time.
Yeah.
Would they think you didn't know what you were doing?
Don't know.
I just couldn't get it. And he said to me, Pepe, he said, at that very moment, I realized that millions of people were watching me.
Did somebody tell me you played every instrument on this album? Is that correct?
Maybe.
No, you're very shy, modest. How many instruments do you play?
And at that point, he just froze. And he told me right after that, he says, that will never happen again. Then he started controlling all of his interviews because he didn't like that feeling. He didn't like that feeling. He wasn't in control.
After the humiliation of American Bandstand, Prince agreed to only a handful of press interviews for the rest of his career. In 1985, aged 27, Prince gave a rare glimpse of the man behind the mask when he was persuaded to speak to Rolling Stone magazine. This would be the most honest interview he ever gave. Prince would only talk if certain conditions were met. Rather than being at home, he was at the wheel of a Ford Thunderbird, taking the reporter around Minneapolis. Prince was in the driver's seat, and if things got too revealing, he could always drive away.
I'm not used to this. I really thought I'd never do interviews again.
Prince agreed to open up because the Rolling Stone writer, like him, was a local boy.
We were born at the same hospital, almost a year apart. My father went to the same schools as he did. Both my parents.
There have been a lot of things said about me, and a lot of them were wrong. I don't mind criticisms. I just don't like lies.
When he motioned me to get in his car, he struck me as incredibly shy, but there was something wrong.
The story Prince told was of someone who would struggle all his life to escape his childhood. There was a void that could never be filled.
The things that happen to us as children are so seared in our brains and they never leave it. And especially at such a young age.
I wasn't gonna pause, but the more I hear this documentary, it just makes me feel something like hearing that Prince spoke for the first time, and reporters were asking him these questions that he didn't know what to say. It's just like, man, Prince was definitely dealing with a lot of issues and demons in his life, especially like what that woman said, young age. It gets rough once you're young, and you go through a lot in a city where you're like the only African American musician, Minneapolis. Then you definitely know you got some demons inside of you that you can't even like get rid of from your childhood. But man, Prince was definitely dealing with a lot. Even though he had to teach himself how to play instruments, how to sing or all that, teach himself, even though he basketball wasn't his thing. Raymond, what is it?
This part about right here.
Is it coral? Is it coral?
No, this is the one where they said something bad about Texas.
Oh, this was a classic.
She cut him in half.
This was a classic episode. Oh, I always love this episode. Yeah, this was a classic episode.
So y'all gotta take. She go back into the rope.
Yes, I saw that. I kept rewinding that part back to back. That was my classic episode. That's my favorite episode right there. Okay, sorry. Okay, but anywho, yeah, it's crazy how Prince lived through that lifestyle and still he was just dealing with a lot of demons, man. But furthermore, I'm gonna continue on. Hopefully, I won't pause this time.
I think when one discovers himself, he discovers God.
When Prince agreed to be interviewed by Rolling Stone magazine in 1985, he was at 27 a superstar. He was also sending the American establishment into a frenzy of disapproval. One critic said Prince's taboo-breaking lyrics were gushing with lust. Tipper Gore, wife of Senator Al Gore, set up the Parents Music Resource Center to protect the young people of America. Top of the list of Tipper's so-called Filthy 15, from a range of different artists, was Prince's song Darling Nikki. Tipper wanted to send out a warning, buyer beware.
I bought Purple Rain for my daughter. We heard the song Let's Go Crazy on the radio, and Prince is a musical genius. I agree with that, and I like some of his music. But I didn't feel like the song Darling Nikki was appropriate for my 11-year-old and my 8 and my 6-year-old.
Do you want to read the couple of lines from Darling Nikki that you find offensive?
I'd be glad to. It says, I met a girl named Nikki. Guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby masturbating with a magazine.
Oh, whoa. Whoa.
Let's hear it.
Darling Nikki.
Knew a girl named Nikki. I guess you could say she was a sex fiend. I met her in a hotel lobby, masturbating with a magazine. She said, how'd you like to waste some time?
Do you really believe that the young people of America should be listening to this kind of thing?
Not at all, ma'am. Completely unacceptable.
So what's the plan? How are we going to stop people buying this music?
Well, ma'am, I've spoken to the Recording Industry and Association of America. They've said they will be willing to consider some kind of warning or packaging to the outside of the disc. I've worked something up here, ma'am, a prototype, warning, parental advisory, explicit content.
You think it will work?
My honest opinion, ma'am, teenagers want this music, and they're going to want it even more if we put the stickers on.
You have so little faith in the youth of America? Meet me at 2:00 in the conference room, Michael.
The impact was, of course, ironically, positive because there were acres of press coverage of this. And people thought, gee, I've got to hear what this is all about. So there were probably about 500,000 people who heard Darling Nikki who otherwise would not have heard it, thanks to the report.
Dang. I told myself in the pause, but this is getting interesting for me. Like, Darling Nikki. And I'm like, if that was the type of woman that Prince met, like what he sang in that song, I bet people were not happy to heard those lyrics. Darling Nikki, I met her in the hotel room masturbating. Like, I guarantee you, people did not want to let their kids hear this. And I know that set a huge fume back in the days. Especially if you're a young black musician. But hey, this right here, I know Prince took a lot of heat in making that song. And I don't know who Nikki is, or if that's some type of hooker that he was hooking up with, but still, if that was some type of diss or like an experience of telling that you met this woman and this is what you did to her or did with her, then you guarantee you people were not gonna allow that song to the young youth. Even though Prince was 27 at that time, but like what he said, he wasn't comfortable speaking in interviews, especially they're trying to control the narrative of his words.
He realized that the sexual component was something that could be marketed and be used to empower him with the fans and empower his music.
Prince's explicit lyrics were not just written to shock and to sell records. They came from somewhere deep inside, from when he was young, too young.
So, which one of your parents are you more like?
My dad and me, we're one of the same. He's a little sick, just like I am. It takes the music to get him going. My mom's the wild side of me. She's like that all the time.
Prince grew up in a sexually charged household. His mother, Mattie, was an aspiring singer when she met Prince's dad. Even after 2 children came along, Mattie Shaw was still out at night trying to restart her career.
I've often wondered about Prince's relationship with his mother. I didn't know her well and met her long after Prince was established as a celebrity. And it comes to mind that as a nightclub singer with a very outgoing personality, it must have been a little puzzling for a young kid to know that his mother is wearing tight dresses and flirting with people from the stage of a nightclub, singing sexy songs.
Don't tell me you ain't seen these before.
Their frustrations as musicians set Prince's parents at each other's throats. In 1968, when Prince was 10, the marriage ended. Mattie quickly took up with another man and then decided the time was right to begin Prince's sex education.
I know that in his interview with Chris Rock on MTV some years ago, he mentioned the fact that at about age 10, I think he said she showed him a Playboy magazine.
I think there was some sort of plan to initiate me heavy and quick. So I was given Playboy magazines.
Get out of here.
Yeah, and there was erotic literature laying around that was very easily picked up. And, It was pretty heavy at the time.
Reading Matty's magazines as a child left Prince confused about his own sexuality and about a mother who gave him pornography when all he needed was love.
Wow. No wonder his mom was weak. Damn. She fed him pornography? Wow. That's kind of harsh, and trying to teach your son that at rarely like 10 years old, like he was 10. Wow. And his parents were divorced and his mom went with another man. Man. This documentary, man, it gets more and more like deep and more like it just makes you feel something. Like this is how it was. This is how it is, or how it was. Born out of Minneapolis, born anywhere, and your parents struggling, confused, trying to benefit themselves with other men, other women, and you, the kid, don't even know what your parents are doing in their lives. But oh yeah. Man, Prince definitely was dealing with a lot. But let me continue on, and I was surprised. I guess half of it I'll stop right there.
Was she someone who was perhaps concerned out of some kind of ignorance that her sensitive, artistic prone young son might be gay? And I'll find out. I'll show him a Playboy and see how he reacts. Who knows why or what actually happened, but it just doesn't sound like the normal upbringing of most young kids.
Prince's background was unstable, and his sexual identity was unstable.
We were on the plane going to North Carolina. He had an afro, right? He gets up and he goes to the bathroom. He takes his bag and he goes to the bathroom. He comes back after, and I'm looking at my watch. I'm going like, gee, man, this guy's been in there for a long time. He comes back and he's got curlers in his hair. He was in the bathroom curling his hair. So he comes out. I go, looking at him, going like, oh, I didn't say anything, because I didn't know. Maybe he was a switch hitter. Maybe he was gay. Maybe he was straight. Maybe I didn't know, And so I didn't say nothing. He sat back down and we just continued on.
I'll be honest, even though I said I wasn't going to stop, but I'll be honest, looking at Prince's picture, he definitely looks like consulted. Like he looked like a mixture, like he's straight and gay, but he looks like not what he expect to be. Is he straight or is he gay? Like what it said in this documentary, his mom fed him pornography. So Prince didn't even know if he was gay or straight. And now he like this interview said, he had curls in his hair. I'm like, wow. Man, Prince was he was sure up, he was confused, lost, and he was just misguided until he had to I don't even want to say more. I'm just going to just continue on and then I'll stop right here.
As a rock star, Prince would always be surrounded by women. He was linked with his backing singers and co-stars throughout his career. And yet intimacy would be problematic all through his life.
When he did get signed, that's when the girls started coming. and we'd be walking, down the street or something, and the girls would say, "Hi, Prince," "Hi, Prince, hello, Prince," and then Prince would look at me and says, "Peppy, last year that girl wouldn't even talk to me."
I saw him as straight because of all these gals that are around him. But I did often think that maybe he wasn't really interested in sex, which seems so bizarre, really.
Sexual ambiguity, never feeling normal, problems with intimacy. Prince toyed with his public for years, constantly exposing different aspects of his sexual being. He dressed up or didn't dress. Sometimes he presented himself as hypersexual. Sometimes as buttoned up. And sometimes both at the same time.
When I saw what he looked like, I couldn't believe it. Because I thought, oh, he's cute, but he's got like suspenders on and some sort of crutch thing going on, covering his crotch. I was like, whoa. And then he had like heels, like over the knee boots. And I mean, he was really out there.
I've got to ask, why the high heels?
People say I always wear high heels because I'm short. I wear high heels because women like them.
Well, I mean, I'm not against homosexuality. Like, I'm not against it. It's just, man, this is how he was living. This is how he was dressing. I'm just like, if he was considered heterosexual, then I'm like, man, ugh. Like I said, I am not against homosexuality. That stuff makes me a little bit uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to see no man in no high heels. But he wore high heels because he was short. And he said women liked them. Crazy. Still, man, the way that he did, the way that he was dressing, and that he put like a spandex, was wearing spandex and all, like, oh man, that right there, like, I know it's his body, it's his dress. He does what he does, but still, it just made me a little bit uncomfortable, man. It's just, I don't like seeing men in freaking high heels and dresses and skirts and spandexes on, like, but still, like what he said, he wore high heels because he was always short, and he said women liked them. Man. But anywho, let me continue on and I'll stop soon.
His energy was super male. I mean, alpha male. There was no feeling for me with him whenever I was with him. I never felt effeminate. He's really a man. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, he is a man. That's what I consider him a man.
He was the black guy that was pushing boundaries like David Bowie was for white guys. Bowie pushed it, and Prince was our Black Bowie.
And then one iconic record changed the game. In his 1984 album Purple Rain, Prince laid bare without ambiguity the demons of his childhood, shame and self-blame.
For me, it was all autobiographical because he was a troubled kid. I mean, from the get-go, he was different. And that's tough.
After his parents' marriage fell apart, Prince felt completely alone in the world.
So do your parents have much of a relationship with each other?
These days, my parents live very close to each other, but they don't talk.
So once your mother remarried, she took less care of you. I'm guessing you spent more time with your dad after that.
His sister stayed with Matty. while Prince was made to shuffle between his mother and his father. Soon, Prince was bringing girls back, flouting his father's authority and testing his affection.
And then you and your dad didn't get along. And when you were 12, he threw you out for fooling around with a girl. Is that right?
I called my dad, and I begged him to take me back after he kicked me out. But he said no. So I called my sister and asked her to ask him to take me back. So she did. And afterwards, she told me that all I had to do was call him back and say I was sorry.
Dad, please just wait. I just want to come back in the house. I'm cold, Dad. Just listen, please, Dad. Dad, just listen to me, please. I won't do it again. Just let me back in the house. Dad, listen to me. Dad, wait. Dad, Dad, Dad.
You were 12 years old, and you didn't have a home?
I sat crying at that phone booth for 2 hours. That's the last time I cried.
Taken in by relatives, Prince would never live with either of his parents again. He wrote about the pain of their rejection in the first best-selling single from his Purple Rain album.
The minute I heard When Doves Cry, I was instantly a fan. That first guitar riff, and then just that beat with no bass in it, you know, and it just instantly just kind of grabbed me.
Dig, if you will, the picture. You and I engaged in a kiss.
Prince set the scene. He's caught with a girl. The consequences are hard and immediate. His mother's gone, and now his father has pushed him away. Prince blames both his parents, holding them equally responsible for casting him out, and also blaming himself for his isolation.
Hey, I can't say, because his parents were weak. They pushed him. They weren't there. They weren't even there for him. And his father was just a selfish man that pretty much his own son had more of a better career than his own father, and his father couldn't even, can't even move on. So he felt like pushing him away was a good idea. Well, the way that Prince carried himself and that what he was doing, pushing music and pushing the way that he was dressing, that right there was a lot of sacrifices for him to make, especially like that's what Purple Rain was. Story of his life, him dealing with demons, self-blame, and just a lot. But furthermore, Prince had weak parents. His father was the control freak. His father was so, like what he said, hard on him, and his father didn't even take him, didn't even want to take him back. Like his own father. No wonder Prince was messed up in the head. No wonder he was all troubled and messed. Like his parents weren't there. Wow. But let me continue on.
Just too demanding. Maybe I'm just like my father, too bold. Maybe I'm just like my mother. She's never satisfied.
When when doves cry, it all speaks to this general lack of security that he had. The fact that he seemed to spend his whole life trying to accumulate a security blanket.
What if everybody around me split? I'd be left with only me. I'd have to fend for me.
Prince first performed the title track from Purple Rain at the First Avenue nightclub, still standing in Minneapolis. He sings about trying to forgive his parents and made this song the theme tune to his first feature film.
He wasn't a man to talk a lot, but my gosh, his music, he said everything in it. He told you everything that he was thinking and doing in his music. If you want to know what Prince was, just listen to his words.
Purple Rain is one long metaphor for a violent storm of rage followed by a new beginning.
When he said the song is called Purple Rain, I immediately said, yes, it's what's coming down from the heavens. Good. The skies swell with a purple, violet, blue. It's gorgeous. It's threatening, and you know, boy, it's going to come down. Get safe. Or celebrate with a big umbrella.
After it was tightened up in the studio, the band members understood Purple Rain was Prince's masterpiece.
I don't believe it. You're starting to get it. You're really starting to get it.
Is a fun song that's an orchestral masterpiece, that's a rock song, that's a ballad, that's a metal song, that's a anthem.
Once the royalties started rolling in from Purple Rain, Prince tried to win back the parental approval he craved. He bought his father a car and gave him a house. They played pool together.
Another great break.
You win at this game.
John Lewis Nelson seemed to accept his son back in his life.
Back in the game.
Darn it. Then criticized Prince's music, saying there were too many swear words.
It's real hard for my dad to show emotion. He never says I love you. Whenever we try to hug or something, we bang our heads together like some Charlie Chaplin movie.
So I'm a hugger. I just love to hug people. I think it's a great way of expressing, your love and openness. I tried it a couple times with Prince. Strange reaction. He was a person that probably needed and wanted and was craving a hug more than anyone on the planet. And he was so stiff and so shocked. I'm not sure that it had happened much to him before. It was really an alien experience, and I'm not sure that he really understood how to process it. I do believe that it is what he wanted and needed, perhaps more than anything.
By the mid-1980s, Prince had 3 Grammy Awards, 5 sold-out tours, 7 albums, and 8 top 10 hits. Yet it wasn't making him happy.
He says, it's very, very lonely. I know I'm getting fame and everybody loves my music. He says, but I'm so lonely. He says, you're the only person that's ever done anything without wanting something back. He says, everyone around me seems to want something. I don't know what their motivations are, but he says, I know they all want something for themselves. He says, I never dreamt that being famous would be so lonely.
The answer for Prince was to build his own protected world where he would feel secure and loved. In 1985, construction began on Paisley Park in Chanhassen, a suburb of Minneapolis.
It was an amazing facility. The upstairs was a wardrobe facility where Prince would go and get fitted for his clothing and had custom designed costuming. He had an apartment in there, his full recording studio in each one of the Studio A, Studio B, and then a full video and film facility that he could rehearse his concerts inside. So it was like a creative mecca.
So you can live anywhere, New York or LA. Why come home?
Just because I love it here so much. I can go out and not get jumped on. It feels good not to be hassled.
On the way up, it harder and harder of who you can trust. And I think Minnesotans are kind of a trustworthy bunch of Scandinavians.
He wanted that sense of community, and I don't think he would have got that from LA or New York, and I think that's why he really stayed in Minneapolis.
Paisley Park cost $10 million to build.
Damn.
A colossal 55,000 square feet, as big as the White House. It was above all where Prince could be Prince. He was 28 years old, and this was the first place he could truly call home.
He was known as the Great Gatsby of Minneapolis, or even the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I just remember going out there, the first time. I hadn't seen Prince come out yet or anything, but with his band members and everybody else there, they just made you feel welcome and made you feel like a part of the family.
Growing up, Prince's musical talents were ignored by his mother and resented by his father. Paisley Park would house a new kind of family, where Prince and Prince's music would always be front and center.
Prince created this environment which he could control, where his studio could be where he lived, so you could just get up and make a record. You didn't have to go to the record plant or any of the other famous studios. And this meant that the people around him were on demand. And he could page them and say, I want to make a record now.
Prince built a temple to himself, surrounded it with a wire fence, and then expected others around him to follow his path and no other.
He would encourage those of us who worked for him at the time that we opened Paisley, that we should all move out to Chanhassen and be nearby. One day we'll have a gated community and we'll all live inside. And it got to the point where it was starting to get kind of Howard Hughes-ish, Jim Jones-ish, just like when does the Kool-Aid come out? It was a little scary for some of us.
One, two, three, four.
Prince was a workaholic, and he had a reputation for that. To give an example, in a recording studio, he would go in a recording studio and he might literally be in a recording studio for 20 hours.
Wow.
And the recording engineers would come and go in shifts because they couldn't keep up.
Can't hear nothing in the monitor.
In his career, he had 40 chart albums. Now, his career wasn't even 40 years long, so he just kept doing it.
Unchain my heart. Unchain my heart. I'm telling you, baby, I got no time for this. Gonna trip. Unchain my heart. Unchain my heart.
I think I worked for 2.5 years straight, almost without any sleep. By the time that I left, I was very exhausted because I always wanted to make sure I gave him what he wanted. I wanted it to be successful. And so I never showed up empty-handed, and I never said no.
Come on. As a child, Prince made himself a musician through willpower, practicing 7 days a week. In Paisley Park, he rehearsed his band the same way.
In order to do production rehearsals, we would come in every day and start wearing our complete stage gear, the actual costumes and clothes that we were going to wear on stage. We would start to perform the show. And literally maybe every 30 seconds or every minute, he would then say, stop.
Wait a minute.
And then we'd say, okay, continue. We'd pick up the song where we left off. We might get another minute into it, and then he'd say, stop. And this would go on for 8 to 10 hours a day after day.
Gonna pack my bag, baby. Gonna leave him at the door.
In addition to being a demanding perfectionist, he was also a better musician than almost anybody in his bands. He was a better drummer than his drummer. He was a better bass player than his bassist. He was a better guitar player than his rhythm guitar players.
One of the first albums out of Paisley Park was Parade. It featured the single Kiss.
Kiss has its very own acoustic, which makes it distinctive. It stands out when it's played on the radio. And it also has a classic intro. All radio programmers used to say, you have to hook your listeners in the first 10 seconds. Otherwise, they'll drift. Well, Kiss. Well, fine. You've got them in 2 seconds.
Kiss would be a hit, yet Warner Brothers did not like its stripped-down feel. They thought it would never sell.
It's almost the job of record companies to resist the new because they always want what's already sold. Let's have another one of those. But in fact, the artist always wants to do something. Try to imagine being Prince. You've already had a decade of album releases, and you don't want to do songs that just sound like the other ones. You want them to sound different. So you have an artist and a record company at odds.
Okay, good, thank you. Prince, this is a sketch. It's a demo. It's not finished, right? Because it sounds like it was recorded in a basement. Hey, we can't put this out. It's not a single. It can't go on the album like that. What's he say?
He says he doesn't care. It's going out first. It's a new single.
Oh, we can't use it. It's not working. I decide. Jesus, this guy's killing me. He's not listening to the label, and the label is what's going to get him anywhere.
Things always had to be the way he wanted them, and if you balked, it wasn't just a question of a disagreement among friends. It was a you're a traitor. You're not a believer. You're not truly supportive of me.
Kiss was a top 10 hit in 10 countries. Blind faith in his own work justified everything for Prince. In the Kiss video, he lives and breathes the music.
Not only is he the best mover since James Brown, he's doing it on heels. He was clearly this phenomenon who came to us from a position within music. He was not a human being playing music. He was a channel for music, and it was coming out of him.
We would say in the church back in the day, we would say he was anointed. That means that he had that special thing that would just grab you and you were transfixed.
Kiss. Prince was flying in the face of his record company, thrilling his public with new hit songs, whatever the cost.
Prince's life was publicly an explosion of excitement. It was lights, it was dancing, it was music, it was rhythm, it was the soul coming out and dancing in full force. But inside, the man was quietly lost, I think quietly sad, and there was a real dichotomy between what the public saw and who was inside.
Yeah, I'll stop right there. Yeah. So far, it's deep. The more I dig into Prince's life, what he experienced as a kid and what he went through as a kid, how he had to, get himself back up to be successful. Like he had to find a way what will make him happy, but like he said, he called Minneapolis his home, and he said he's more suitable in Minneapolis. That right there is a man that has a true loyal statement. It's like I'd rather be right here where I love and where I am most adored as in some other place, because I know they're not going to treat me better, not going to treat me well. They're going to do me dirty. And like what they say, he always felt alone. Building that 10 million fortress he called home. But like what he said, he always felt alone. Sad, but alone. No one, just himself. Like he said, I gotta fight for yourself. I gotta fight, defend. I can trust myself. And the only person that I will believe in is me. But yeah, man. Yeah, like this right here was really, really, really deep and really sad at the end. So it's crazy that his own father didn't love. His own father didn't even say "I love you" back to him. They didn't hug, but they, like he said, they bumped heads. But but hey, I'm about questioning Prince's greatness, because Purple Rain was a masterpiece in Prince's career, and I can know it basically was about his demons, about his life, self-blame and lost, and his parents deceiving him. But hey, this right here was part 1 of the Prince documentary right here. So appreciate tuning in, and therefore I'm going to be doing the second part real soon. So stay tuned and tune in, and this is me signing off.